Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
When we talk to her, tell her her streets will get swept next week.
She'll be happy about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to our graduation ceremony, class of 2016. Everybody, give yourselves a hand. There's a few people that couldn't make it tonight. Sadly, Mel Colgrove can't be here. She had 3 or 4 more questions. She's still trying to but welcome and thank you to council for allowing us this time to have our graduation. We appreciate it and really appreciate the support that you give the Academy every year. This is our 7th Citizens Academy. And I was thinking that as I was walking in here, we've had enough of these now where I got to go check and see if someone was in the class or not. And that's a good thing. That means we're growing, we get more and more every year, but now I don't recognize, you only had 2 or 3 classes. It's like, oh yeah, that person was in the Academy. Now I'm not going to go back and check, and that's really good. That's a good indicator of how popular the Academy is and how involved our graduates are getting. So that's a good thing. This year, as I said, our 7th Citizens Academy. And as we're talking here, notice the photos that are going on behind and beside you. It gives you, council, an idea of the breadth and scope of the classes that our Academy went through, what they learned, what they saw, who they interacted with. It really gives you an idea of the pretty comprehensive lessons they learned over about 4 months, usually twice a month, between Valentine's Day and Memorial Day. So it was, as we said, very comprehensive, and it wouldn't be possible without the support, as I said, of council, the city manager, especially of staff. And I'd like to just briefly recognize all the staff that took place. City Manager Tom Homan, Dave Eflin, John Donahue, Doug Stewart, Charlie Cooprider, Sean Hughes, Darren Shulman, Bo Freno, Matt Weber, Charles Dukes, Joe Bolus, Linda Matthews, Frank Chris, Brad Stanton, Tom Henson, Stacy Davenport, Linda Matthews again, Ted Miller, Adam Moore, Rob Alger, and John Hunter. Quite an impressive list of city staff that give up their time to make the Academy the success that it is. One of the things you'll notice from this class, there's 2 things that I noticed in this class. One, I'm very proud to say we already have members of the class that are serving the city, that are either on a volunteer capacity on a board or commission. So they're already serving before graduation. I think that's a testament to the good class we had. Also, if you got here earlier, they get along pretty good. We have a lot of fun, and they've gotten to know each other, and that was one of the things that we said. We start out as strangers, and we end as friends, and all of the shared better understanding of our city. Again, that's a very good thing. But the class got along real good. We did put up with and learn a lot from one of our students, Mel Colgrove, who couldn't be here tonight. We all know Mel lives in Stratford Woods. She's the mayor of Stratford Woods. And the neat thing about Mel, she is not shy about reaching out to council and to staff, and yet she took the Academy. She probably knows more about different departments than some of the department people, but she still took the Academy and had a great time, and was very positive about it. And again, I think that just goes to the quality of citizens that we have. So with that, shall we introduce our class of 2016?
Absolutely, and I just want to say thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to take this class. It means a lot to us as council members, knowing there's people out there that care, that want to learn more about our city. So thank you all very much. I will tell you, I saw Mel last Thursday night at the barn for a moving Delaware board meeting, and she wanted to know when her streets were going to be cleaned. And she said, Charles Duke looked me in the eye and told me it was going to happen. When's it going to happen?
I think you're doing that photo right there. Right there. So there she is. There she got the answer she wanted. So with that, we will introduce our class of 2016. When I call your name, come up. Receive your diploma, a handshake from the mayor, and lovely parting gifts. First, Janice Ripka.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You can just stay standing up here, that'd be great. John Ripka.
Thank you very much.
And John and Janice continue our streak, I believe, of a husband and wife in every academy going back to 2010. Jonathan Williamson. Bob Canis. Robert Amstutz. Sarah Carberry. Sarah Stevens. And Stacy Hines. Stacy also continues a trend of city employees who is our second year in a row. Congratulations, Stacy. Of a city employee. Council, those assembled, our class of 2016.
He doesn't want Well, they
There's something that you learned that you were just, didn't have any idea from the pops out of your mind?
Come on.
Give me one thing.
Yeah.
I really like the public works building. It's so fascinating to see how much.
Good. All right, well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. We'll go outside for our class.
Hi. Good, good, just got back. Says we're coming back from Maryland, and we're in at 270, looking for
The time is 7 o'clock, and I'll call the order city council meeting for June 13th, 2016. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller? Mr. DeGenova?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Motion to excuse Councilwoman Keller.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. And this time, I'm going to ask Lisa Ho to come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Ho. I'm Associate Chaplain at Ohio Wesleyan University. I'm also a member of Terra Nova Community Church. Tonight for the invocation, after speaking with Mayor Riggle, we thought what might be most appropriate is if we could all stand for a moment and take each other's hands. And if you are a germaphobe, put your arm around the other person. But there you go. Thank you, guys. Let's take a moment in our shared humanity to recognize that we are one. We are one as a community here in Delaware, and we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters across this nation, but especially tonight in Orlando. Let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. You can be seated. Oh, no, please stay standing.
Now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Item 4 is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held May 23rd as recorded and transcribed. What is the wish of council?
I move for the approval of it. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. And number 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary for the Shade Tree Commission meeting held April 26, 2016. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary for the 2016 Charter Review Commission meeting held May 12, 2016. Item C, acceptance of the motion summary for the Civil Service Commission meeting held April 13, 2016. Item D, acceptance of the motion summary for the Planning Commission meeting held May 4, 2016. Item E, acceptance of the motion summaries for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting held June 10, 2015 and March 9, 2016. Item F, established June 27th and July 11th, 2016 at 7:30 p.m. as the dates and times for public hearings and second readings of ordinance number 16-45. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electorate of amendments to the Delaware City Charter and declaring an emergency. Item G, established June 27th and July 11th, 2016 at 8:00 p.m. as the date and times for public hearing and second readings of ordinance number 16-46. An ordinance to amend sections 192.012, 192.013, 192.014, and 192.02 of the codified ordinances of the City of Delaware, Ohio, in order to increase the city income tax by 0.15% from the current rate of 1.85% to a rate of 2% beginning January 1st, 2017, for the purpose of pay the cost of improving and maintaining the transportation and parking system in the city by constructing and reconstructing municipal roads, highways, streets, bridges, sidewalks, bikeways, and parking facilities acquiring real estate and interest in real estate therefore, and paying the debt service charges and related cost of securities issued to pay the cost of these projects.
Thank you. In item G, on the tax levy, it reads 1.55 and it should read 1.5. What are you smiling about?
0.15.
0.15. Now, that extra 5 shouldn't be there. Excuse me. It's not your fault, it's written wrong. Pardon? Yes.
Oh, yeah, percent, that's on the same thing.
Right, yes,
I think it should also, for the purposes of paying the cost.
paying the cost.
Should we amend it then?
Sure,
Well,
I think those were,
it's the agenda.
we don't need to amend it right here because I'll give you a little preview. We have sent this to our bond counsel to review as well, and throughout discussion, I'm guessing there'll probably be some tweaks and changes as we move forward through the reading. So I'll take notes and have that fixed for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So what is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
Move for the approval of consent agenda.
second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petition, or public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. I don't think there could possibly be anybody in this room, but is anybody that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Mr. Jones?
Go ahead and done there.
Mr. DeGenova?
I have several. I have the Finance Committee met last week of May, and the report will be in the consent agenda in 2 weeks. There was an error made on it, and we'll have it submitted. Civil Service Commission met June 1st, and we reviewed the police and fire list of employees to be on that. And then I attended 4 of the Moving Delaware Forward the last 10 days. Source Point was one area. Second area was Willowbrook, which we had over 100 constituents. And then we met with the school board last Monday night, Tom and I and Bill. And we had a standing room only there. And then a fourth meeting was last week at Stratford Woods area. We met at the barn, the new barn out at the Historical Society. We had well over 100 people attend that. And I thought that was real good for those 4 areas as far as we're trying to hit various civic organizations prior to us making a final decision in 6 weeks. I also attended the Veterans Memorial Plaza burning of flags yesterday. It was very poor turnout. Vietnam group Post 1095 did the ceremony, and the fire chief and I thank the firemen that showed up. They did an outstanding job. There was myself, my wife, another couple, and the ROTC, and that was all that attended that ceremony, which I thought was really bad. We had a Hayes Memorial meeting on the 9th of June. Gene Buckingham is in charge, is going to be chairing that committee. And they need more members of the community. They'd like to get a lot of ex-alumni of Hayes in order to partake in that. For those of you who don't know, we're trying to build a memorial at Hayes at Almado's, and the project's going to be about $400,000 to $500,000. And then the 2nd of June, I met with the Veterans Breakfast Committee at the Ohio National Guard and YMCA. Source Point is no longer going to have that breakfast on Veterans Day. And there's 4 members of Source Point that are on the committee this year, but are not going to be on it next year. So there's 4 vacancies there, and they're looking for some extra bodies.
That's all?
Busy week.
Mr. Rohr?
I have nothing to do.
Mr. Hellinger?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to presentation. So will the lacrosse team come forward?
All right.
Let's see.
Hat dude, take your hats off. Thank you.
Well, congratulations to all of you. I'm really happy that you could be here tonight. Congratulations on your achievement. The proclamation reads, whereas the city of Delaware has a responsibility to recognize occasions of outstanding significance, and whereas the Dempsey Middle School boys lacrosse team enjoyed a memorable 2016 season, and whereas the combined 7th and 8th grade squad got the history-making season by winning the state championship in May, and whereas Dempsey compiled a 13-3-1 record and won 4 games in the state tournament, defeating Upper Arlington in the championship by a 3-2 score. Whereas for this achievement, head coach Anthony Sanfilippo and his assistant coach Steve Schumacher honored their community by showing their devotion to coaching. Whereas each Dempsey team members demonstrated remarkable dedication to team spirit. Now, therefore, I, Carolyn K. Riddle, Mayor of the City of Delaware, do hereby issue this proclamation in honor of the state champion Dempsey Middle School lacrosse team in the City of Delaware, Ohio. And I'm joined by my fellow citizens in congratulating this team.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Everyone here for coming and, let's run us throughout the year. A lot of people didn't get to show due to other items they had going on tonight, so I can, I pass their thanks along to you.
Good. Well, thank you all.
Is San Filippo out there?
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want that one, but I mean, his dad.
Thanks for your hard work.
Just, I'd like to comment, he did an outstanding job starting this program, and I think he needs a round of applause. To see what you got anything to say, Paisan?
No. Congratulations, gentlemen, especially that final game beating UA. That's it's the 4th state title in 8 years, so we're happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is the varsity. This is Dempsey.
All right, Mary Jane, they're all going to come back in and listen to your presentation. I'm sure that's what they're here for.
You're gonna stay there?
Yeah.
Let me know if I need QB.
I'll give you this.
That'd be good.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah. I will get your back.
We're going to? Okay.
I'll just give you.
Okay.
Just present. Just present. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know sign language like me.
Yeah. Almost.
Dan Bennington's in the house. Dan, you want your chair back?
Okay. Item B on the presentation is 2016 Charter Review Commission recommendation. And tonight, Mary Jane Santos is going to be giving us an update on what they have decided.
Good evening, and thank you. First of all, I'd like to recognize the other members of the Charter Review Commission, some of whom are here tonight. I think Dan wants to get rid of some bloodless coup going on here, Dan. Dan Bennington, Jack Kilborn, Mayor Regal, Charlotte Joseph, Stephanie Steinbeck, Kathy Falter, Megan Cochran, and Jeremy Myers. They were all very dedicated to this process. They worked really hard. We had homework every meeting, and we managed to get through this in an expeditious manner, even though there was quite a lot of work to get done. And secondly, I thought I would give you the overriding philosophy that we decided upon going in, which is that we looked at the charter and our goals were to make it more accessible to the public and to make it sure that it met the needs of the city and that it reflected what the city is doing and what the city should be doing, and to make the language a little bit easier for folks to understand. We went by a very methodical process, which included, as I said, homework, and every time we met, we had certain sections that we went through, literally word by word, through each section. Some of the sections we had questions, concerns, comments, or amendments to recommend to you. Some of them were fine, and we let them stand as they were written. However, please understand that we went through it word by word. Again, they did an awful lot of work to go through this. There were a couple, I'm going to let Darren go through the majority of the proposed or potential changes for you, but a couple of things really stood out to us that we wanted to make sure that the council was aware of. The first one is we had quite a long discussion on whether or not the ward should be expanded in number. We're bordering on 40,000 for population, around 10,000 people per ward, represented per ward. We had a lot of conversation about whether or not that was an optimum number. Was it too small? Was it too big? Should there be more wards? At the end of the day, we realized we did not have enough data to make decisions, firstly. And secondly, we also realized that as the city continues to grow, that's something that needs to be continually looked at. And while we recommended no changes at this particular review of the commission, we think that that's something City Council should be watching and looking for, and perhaps ordering some studies just to see what the optimum number of wards would be for our city's population as we continue to grow. The second part of the commission, or the charter that took a lot of our time, was the election process itself. There was some, for city council members, there was some conversation, a lot of conversation about what a clear majority is in terms of a council person being elected. Since there is a nonpartisan position, since there is no primary, it's possible to win an election with 22 or 24% of the voters in a particular ward or at large, depending on how many folks were running and how the votes got split among those folks running. We felt that there should be a clear majority of 50.1% for someone who's running for council. However, when we began to look at that, we realized it was far more complicated than just saying, ought to have 50% to represent. Because that could entail a primary election, for example. Because if you're going to have it, you can't do it all in November. If we have 6 people running for a ward in November, and the winner gets 28%, and our charter says you have to have 50%, somewhere in there we have to allow for another election, a runoff, a something. So Darren did some research for us, talked to the Board of Elections, and while it is certainly possible for us to do anything that we want to do in terms of running those elections differently, as long as we do them within the guidelines of the Board of Elections in the state of Ohio, we also felt that that was a huge change that would be put upon the public at this time. However, we still feel it's very important, and we'd like for the council to take the time and collect data for the next commission or committee charter review, which is 2024, and see whether or not that is something that should be entertained. Should there be a better way of electing city council members so that indeed they are representing the majority of the people who voted for them? We felt very strongly about that, and we wanted to make sure that you all understood how important that was to us. Again, such a monumental change. We didn't feel we had the data to go forth with it. Darren was very helpful in gathering some of that information for us. But at the end of the day, we decided to leave it the way it is, with the understanding that we think it needs to be changed, but probably not at this time. I think that's pretty much, Carolyn, correct me if I've missed anything. Darren has prepared for you a very wonderful spreadsheet, ish kind of thing, in which he has divided our changes into 3 different types. The first one is modernization. This is where we looked at the language, and sometimes it was so convoluted. There were sentences that were 300 words long that made no sense whatsoever when you finished reading them. And I'm an English major, so I had to have my say on those. So a lot of those changes you'll see just as a way of modernizing the language, making it more approachable and accessible for the general public. The second one, and those we believe are the most important, some of the most important changes that we have.
And Mary Jane, do you mind if I just jump in? Not only are they just language changes, but there are some things in there that we just don't really do anymore. They were,
right.
The charter was written in 1950, and it talks about storerooms and things that just don't exist, or written bonds that are all done electronically now. So those are the most substantive changes that involve changing something that is in the charter. Sorry to interrupt.
And our clarification changes, these were actually aimed at improving confusing or ambiguous parts of the charter. And finally, we had style or cleanup changes. These are probably the least important changes that we've made. These are things, grammatical errors that we found. I have a thing with but starting the beginning of a sentence. So whenever I saw a sentence that started with but, I wanted it changed. However, we understand that these are, not the kind of changes that probably need to go forth to the public, but they are things that certainly do need to be changed. There was a comma though, comma but. So with that, I'm going to let Darren go through, and I'll be happy to sit here if you have any other questions.
So I'll start off by letting council know I sent a memo out separately from the packet last week. I believe it was Friday. That was necessitated by the fact that our commission met on Thursday night after the packet was done. So I promised Michelle, who was having back surgery that day, that I would email it out separately. So it will be included in future packets. And if any attendees or people listening on YouTube would like a copy of it, I'd be happy to email it to them. It just didn't happen until after the packet went out. As Chairwoman Santos described, I did write a cover memo to kind of break down the changes, and then I also sent the actual marked up copy of the changes. At this point, I'd just like to walk you through some of the substantive changes that I think are worth noting and most important. For example, Section 5 of the Charter, as Council knows, I think we actually have one on here. We have to approve intergovernmental agreements right now by ordinance, and you find yourself in that box of either suspending the rules or feeling guilty about it, or just having to wait. Based on the way we do things now and the spirit of cooperation that is kind of being pushed down throughout all levels of government, we felt that changing that to resolution would streamline the process and be a little bit more honest about what we're doing, as opposed to having to suspend the rules ad nauseum for no reason. So they're usually not very controversial. So that's one change we recommended. We also made a number of changes, and I'll walk through the sections, trying to shift towards electronic materials and keeping of records. A lot of references were made to keeping things in paper journals or keeping volumes and advertising in newspapers, and we found that the way people get information has shifted electronically. So, for example, 16, 17, and 21, and 26 all talk about using our website and allowing electronic records as a way to keep some of these things. And that's a real modernization opportunity that I think could save taxpayers money, as opposed to having to print volumes and keep them in a basement. The same thing with 77, talking about electronic copies on the website. 92 and 95 also talk about electronic records. We also, on section 109, right now we have a weird section that I think, looking historically, talked about when the Planning Commission was a separate entity before we were a charter, and they basically have a provision that says they can hire staff and employees and kind of do stuff. They don't really have that ability now. They're not paid, and they're just kind of a volunteer commission. So we recommended striking a reference to them having staff, because it just seemed kind of weird. Also, this might be of note to you come budget time. We have a weird charter provision that says members city manager and the clerk, their salary is set by ordinance. We do that. It says department heads are set at a range, and then all other employees, department heads are set at a specific salary, and then all other employees are set at a salary or within a range set by council, and that's typically what we do with the budget. But we realized that it didn't make much sense to distinguish between the department heads and the other employees. Council can set that range, which would allow a little bit more flexibility if there was a vacancy in the middle of a year, rather than having to say you are going to make, $27,000 a year. You could say you can make between 19 and 30, and that way it gives the city manager the ability to be a little bit more flexible. It still gives council the power to either set the exact number or set a range that it's comfortable with. And then finally, number 126 is another electronic copy of the charter provision. So those are the big ones that I think the commission and I don't want to put my vote into it too, but we felt like those are the kind of big changes. There are a lot of other improvements that we've made to clarify processes and make it clear what's going on, and make it easier to read, because if you've ever read the charter, it can kind of make your eyes bleed. So I think we're all confident that the way we've written it is a lot easier to read. So those would probably be the second tier of changes we would recommend. And the third tier is the infamous but and generally sections where there's stuff in there that just doesn't read right, or it's okay, but it looks weird grammatically. So those, I call those style and cleanup. So now that you have kind of a broad overview, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm sure the members of the commission who did a great job working through this would answer any questions, or I'll be here at the next meeting and I can answer any now. But I wasn't going to make the commission members come back unless you need them to. So if you have any questions for them, this would be a great opportunity.
Any questions by council? I just want to thank you all very much. It was a joy serving with you all. I know it was tedious at times, but I really, really appreciate it. We had a great commission, I felt, and Darren, you did an absolute fabulous job.
Thank you.
So,
and in terms of process, this will go up for public hearings and readings. These are recommendations to council. Council then can change. You can reject them, you can accept them all, or you can amend it. So if you say, I don't like these 4 things, we can not move those forward. And then after you vote, we send over the Board of Elections, and it goes before the voters. And since there's so many potentially, we probably would put them forward as one charter change as opposed to 17 things they got to vote on, because by the time they get through 5 of them, they'll probably stop voting.
exactly.
I had just a couple of questions, and I want to echo Mayor Riggle's comments regarding thanking the commission and the work of Darren. I know that Mayor Riggle was part of that process. Just a question regarding or 2 things, and this came up, City Council raised this about a year ago in terms of the readings. And at one point we had talked about the necessity of going for 1 reading, 2 reading, 3 readings. And I thought we had discussion about that and looking at
Yes.
2 versus 3. And I know Councilman Jones had brought it up at one point, just because we were suspending the rules quite a bit. And
I'll set the table, and then I'll allow the commission to actually decide the issue. So I did bring that forward as one of the changes that I proposed, recommended based on what I've seen here. I think it was discussed for probably a good half an hour. That was kind of one of the big issues, and it just ended up being that the commission decided to vote against that change. Do you have any more insight as to why, Mary Jane?
Only, and having been on the council, I know how that can get very laborious and tedious, but we also felt at the end of the day, the public had a right to have those 3 readings. So that's how the commission came down on that.
go ahead, Joe.
Was there any discussion on term limitations for council? Since
No.
other political entities have, like a 3, 4, 5 terms.
I don't
No,
think
never.
we ever discussed that
Never
at all,
came
Joe.
up.
Okay.
It's not in the charter. It doesn't say anything.
I don't think it's in the charter. I don't-
It could have been proposed by someone who was interested in that, but we never got any requests to look at that issue from the public. And since it's not in there now, it just never occurred to any of us to look at it, I don't think.
And I know the second part of it is salaries for council people. We cannot give ourselves a raise. Is that discussed at all?
Actually, we did address that a little bit. Let me find that section of my crosswalk. So we did a couple things. I had proposed a more complicated measure, but that got too complicated and wasn't adopted. But what we did recommend changing was, right now there's a prohibition on increasing or decreasing salaries within that 90-day thing. We kind of thought, well, the commission thought, if council wants to reduce their own salaries, I think the taxpayers would probably be pretty happy about that. So we recommend deleting the prohibition on decreasing your own salary. There is that still limitation on increasing salaries within the 90 days before the election. The other thing we did do, though, is I think it's confusing. Right now, it talks about the $120 salary that was there with the very first charter, and then it says, but after that, it can be set by ordinance. Given the fact that we now have ordinances in place, we thought that 120 was misleading, so we recommended striking that because it looks like, hey, wait, should they get 120? Now they're up to this amount. So those are sort of the only things that we touched, but we didn't make it any harder. We just made it easier to decrease your salary. To answer your question, Councilman DeGenova.
Just another question regarding the recommendation for the intergovernmental agreements by resolution. Nothing would keep council from, if they decided to use an ordinance for an intergovernmental agreement, depending on.
Yeah, they could.
Okay, because I can envision some that might be less housekeeping in nature than others.
Yeah, you can always do an ordinance. We just didn't want to bind you to having to do that.
And then on the last one I had was just on the first change 4A. I know that was put in there after the New London decision regarding using eminent domain for economic development purposes. And can you just clarify what we're doing here?
So that section, in looking back on it, it looked like it was passed based on a case that was pending, and then it had sunset language in the charter saying, well, this thing won't become effective after this date anyway, so it seemed kind of weird to have a charter provision that sunset but stayed in there. It was kind of misleading. With that said, I think that charter change was done before the Supreme Court ultimately ruled on that case. So now that the Supreme Court has ruled on the case, we thought it'd be easier to clarify it to say, rather than having a section that doesn't necessarily mean anything but has a sunset provision saying we abide by the state law, which prohibits that very same thing, but it gets rid of the sunset provision because it's just complicated. So we originally thought about striking the whole thing, but we thought that would mislead the public into thinking we could do eminent domain for economic development, which is not our intent. So rather than doing that, we're just going to say we recognize that we cannot do it based on state law. Because it's got a sunset clause that sunsets the whole provision anyway.
But still, it doesn't remove the prohibition.
No, it just acknowledges that it comes from the state and keeps it in the charter.
Okay.
And we felt that if that went to the public, that we were going to strike the provisions for eminent domain, excuse me, we feared that the public would feel as though the council was being overreaching.
Okay.
So we thought we'll just leave it in there, but clarify it.
Okay.
That's one of those, it's clarification. It doesn't kill anybody by being there, but it just looks weird to have a charter section that says this provision sunsets on a date that's already passed. And it just kind of, even though it's still in effect because the Supreme Court ruled it. So we tried to clean it up in a way that if someone read it, it wouldn't look like we are allowing that. This is the kind of fun stuff we got to talk about.
Any other questions? No. All right, well, is there anyone from the commission that would like to add anything or? No? All right, well, thank you again so much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
It's Megan.
Dan, I want it back. Dan, you can have it back.
Okay, item 9 on the agenda is consideration of resolution number 16-24. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Resolution number 16-24, a resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit applications for federal attributable funding through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for the planning, design, and construction of the US 36 State Route 37 intersection, The Point, improvement project and for citywide traffic signal systems upgrades.
Thank you. Mr. Farino?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. First thing I want to note is the agenda description is incorrect. The resolution is correct. The right language is in there. This is applications for both the Point project as well as traffic signal improvements. What we're going to do tonight is walk through a couple of things fairly quickly. The purpose why we're doing this legislation now, for MORPC funding applications for attributable funding, they do require a demonstration of your community support and that's through council resolution approving this application that we're putting together. Really authorizes the city manager to go ahead and submit these applications. One would be for the point project. The other one at this point would be for the traffic signalization project. We may be bringing back at the next meeting a similar resolution. There are multiple funding sources for the point project. You'll hear some more about that from our consultants here tonight. From the TRAC funding or the Transportation Review Advisory Council, our consultant right now is reviewing the fine print on that to see if we have to have a separate resolution versus utilize the one that we're considering tonight. So there may be a similar discussion at the next meeting. MORPC funding, I think, as we've talked before, really ends up in 2-year cycles. This is the time of year when applications are submitted. On July 1st, we'll submit what's called a screening application, and that will give, we'll get feedback from that regarding what we're requiring, what we're requesting, what our funding makeup is, and we'll get comments back in terms of the scope and what MORPC thinks in terms of what our total ask is. From those comments and feedback, we'll design a final application that'll be submitted in August. So it's pretty important to get a screening application in, and that will be July 1st. The first part, though, is since we are putting 2 applications in and we are prioritizing our applications, the point project will be our #1 priority. But we're also submitting for funding for the signal system improvements as well. That'll be the second priority. Most likely, they'll be not competing for the same pot of money, though. So we're fairly confident it's a good move strategically to submit both applications at this point. We will have our MS come up briefly, but I wanted to let Jessica first review on the traffic side, on the traffic signal side, exactly what our scope is and what our funding request will be. Jessica.
As you all are aware, the last time we've updated our signal system was in 1999 with the closed loop system, so it's pretty outdated at this point. We've had traffic increase, traffic patterns change, numerous things happen. So the main priority of the application will be to show that we are going to update timing and programming to come to today's traffic and everything. Along with that application, we'll be possibly upgrading our communication, which would be getting to our what I call the dial-up system, like your old internet, to fiber and high-speed radios. Vehicle detection is part of that, preemption, battery backup, and converting our system to a centralized system. Right now we have 4 different masters out there in the field, and they kind of control each local intersection. So we'll bring that into one house so you can see everything from one computerized system. So camera systems will also be installed hopefully with this to monitor traffic at different locations within the city. So if we do get reports of backup, at least we can zoom in, kind of see what the problem is, whether it's an accident, something else. So pedestrian upgrades are part of this. We pretty much got everything with the countdown timers upgraded, but this will be with pedestrian push buttons, potential accessible pedestrian signals where they are warranted and stuff. So these improvements, our hopes are to alleviate congestion, reduce delay, and improve travel time along the corridors. And the main corridors we'll be looking at are Sandusky Street, Central Avenue, and William Street, and that'll be from 23 all the way out to the west side of town. We're not including the east side because that's a separate study with the east side circulation. So, and then also London Road will be part of that. So, any questions?
Okay, I just want to mention a couple more things too on the signal. We've been talking a lot in our Moving Delaware Forward about signals, but typically in a large signal system like ours, you'd reprogram every 2 to 4 years. You should go out, recount your intersections because we're growing so quickly. Things change. You want to stay efficient. We have really primarily focused, since Jessica's been on board and focusing as our transportation engineer down at Public Works, really now for probably 4 years, heavily involved in signals. Our focus has been just trying to get the system, the equipment we have to operate correctly and get communication. We haven't upgraded our timing in 15 years. So even though we have a coordinated system, it's disjointed, it doesn't communicate well. Jessica's done a great job in putting the Band-Aids on, upgrading things that we can. And she's been key in some of the major upgrades we've had so far, countdown timers, the signal project up at Sandusky and Central Avenue. But what we're talking about is a very significant project to get us up to current times. So that's the first effort we have. The second we're going to talk about, and in a minute I'm going to have our consultants come up, is the point project. And some have asked, why are we preparing and submitting these things now? If we're going to have a significant local component, we have a potential levy issue to fall. Why are we doing this now? Because Simple answer is we got to take an opportunity to try to get funding for this project through the federal and state resources that are available this round, which won't truly be available to us in terms of revenue until 2021. The next round's not until 2018. That means the revenue would be available in 2023. And I really don't feel that we should be waiting another 7 years to try to solve the problem at point. So we are stepping out, but we're looking for a significant portion, close to 75% funding for the project. And we'll have to come up with our portion of it. But now's the time to put those applications in because it is an extended period. It gives us time to work on our local match over the next few years. We've got to get the applications in a hurry. At this point, I want to introduce Tom Hibbard and Ryan Bush over here. Ryan's going to drive the computer a bit, and Tom as well. Yeah. And this team is really, we've hired them to put two things together. The first is to point project applications. And when I say applications, they're working on a MORPC federal attributable funding application for those funds, also a track application. And as we started working through the process and in cooperation also with Jessica, we realized we can apply for state safety funds on this project as well. So they're going to talk a bit about that breakdown. So there's 3 applications that they're putting together for us. The first of which is due on the end of this month. The next one's due on the 1st of July. And then the safety funding, I think, is due a little later in August. And then final applications are due. So in the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to have a lot of applications in for up to $23 million for this project, and largely due to the work and expertise from MS. MS is also on board. We talked about the East Side traffic circulation study. Are there different things we should do on that? And Ryan's done a lot of the traffic management work on that. We'll have a presentation, not tonight on that, but probably within the next, I want to say 6 weeks or so, with some concepts that they've come up with. The universal component of all of them is the point has to be wide in the bridge. So we're very confident going forward with that project and the applications, even though there's some different things that may happen downstream and upstream from it. We know every project universally, that point project has to be opened up. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tom Hibbard and let them discuss a bit about the project approach and just some of the details we've worked through to this point.
Tom, for the record, would you mind giving us your address?
Sure. It's Tom Hibbard, and it's 2221 Schrock Road, Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. The Delaware Point, the 3637 intersection, is probably the most notorious intersection in Delaware County for traffic congestion, and the city has done a lot of work over the past years to make improvements to it, and it has made its operations better. But as traffic continues to grow, it continues to be a problem. If we're looking at improvements that will last for the next 25 years, we're looking at traffic projections that will increase traffic yet another 50% over what's out there today. And that we expect will increase delays from 2 to 3 minutes that are out there now to an upwards of 5 to 8 minutes during peak hours. So there's a real critical need for that project. There's also a safety issue. This section of roadway from the bridge, the railroad bridge, back to the 521 intersection is on the top 100 list of crash locations in the state for non-freeway areas. So it's very important, and the improvements that we're looking at to fix this problem is to add lanes. And adding lanes, as we know, with that railroad bridge is going to require us to replace the railroad bridge. So if you can go to the PDF file for me, Ryan, we'll kind of walk through the concept that we've developed. I think it's the other file.
Oh, Ryan, you blew it.
Yeah. It's the 5th one down. So the project that we're looking at, pardon me, the project that we're looking at extends from on the west side from Foley Street all the way over to the east, which is Route 521 Mill Run intersection. So zooming in on the eastern end of the project and kind of walking through this a little bit, What we want to do is to build off of the improvements the city has already made to the intersection of 36, 37. We'd be adding yet another left turn lane from 37 to turn on to 36. And as part of that, adding lanes in both the eastbound and westbound direction onto the railroad bridge. Should also point out the pink lines as shown on this exhibit. Those are shared use paths that we plan to construct in the area. On the north side, that would get a connection from the east side neighborhoods underneath the bridge over to Bowtown Road. And on the south side, that would get a connection down to Mill Run and down to the Wetlands Park there. We have, as I said, 2 lanes in each direction that are proposed. That'll be good for us for about the next, based on our traffic forecasting, for about another 15 years based on traffic forecasting. One thing on this exhibit I want to point out is on the north side, there's a need for an additional westbound lane through the 521 intersection when you look from year 15 to year 25. So we've allowed for room when we make the infrastructure improvements, like especially the bridge replacement, for that additional lane to get constructed at some point in the future. And so there's a little bit more space over there.
I'm sorry, real quick. So would that mean there's 3 lanes going east and west?
3 lanes westbound, 2 lanes eastbound. So the eastbound lanes will be okay. It's just the westbound lanes through the intersection of 521 require that. As we go east of the railroad bridge there at the existing Bowtown Road intersection, we propose to put a median there, which would block left turns going in and out, and that's a management of the traffic flow that would be part of this improvement. Again, looking at improving safety and reducing congestion. We still allow for all the turning movements into the businesses and the Sundell Park over in this area. We are maintaining the access into the Delaware Commerce Park. The black X is there. We would indicate that we plan to close the median crossover. We'd allow for U-turns there at the break at the Delaware Commerce Park. We have also are proposing some access changes there at the Oakland Nursery and the Marathon Station in order to improve the consolidate access points and improve the safety and reduce the congestion. All of these improvements, as Bill said, are part of what is needed in order for the east side traffic circulation to be improved. And this is part of a study that Ryan is looking at and is going to be talk a little bit about that here.
So the 2 lanes that currently go down to 1 lane right in front of the fire station, that would then be 3 lanes going down to 2, or it would stay? I'm confused.
Okay, I'm sorry, I haven't explained that well. We have 2 lanes as you go westbound, and as you approach the bridge, that necks down to 1 lane.
Correct.
As part of this project that we're constructing, it would be 2 lanes, then all the way to 37. 1 lane would split to go to 37, and the other lane would go to 36.
So there's no more merging to 1 lane?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, the future lane that I talked about, that would be yet another lane that would be carried through.
Well, the purpose of the East Side study will be to evaluate by the Ryan Bush, 2221 Schrock Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43229.
Thank you.
The purpose of the East Side study will be to evaluate long-range alternatives to improve the operations of traffic flow on the east side of the city from Sandusky Street east toward the point here, primarily focusing on Central and William Avenue. The proposed point improvements, as Tom pointed out, are going to be consistent with any of the options that we're looking at for the East Side study. So that this particular improvement is not going to constrain the alternatives we're looking at on the east side. The study is going to be evaluating all the traffic benefits of the options against the red flags or the cost, whether it's bridges, the pedestrian accommodations, the downtown circulation, all those types of factors, and we'll be developing a recommendation for the best path to move forward.
So with those improvements then, as we talked about earlier, we're in the process of preparing the funding applications for the Point project. And on the slides, I've got a slide that talks about the schedule and the funding that we're applying for. Starting this year in 2016, as Bill said, we're in the process right now of preparing and submitting applications. So switching to the next slide, it kind of focuses in here a little bit more on the 2016 to 2018. And you can see the applications, as Bill said, go in at the end of June and beginning of July, as well as the safety application the final application for that would go in towards the end of September. All of those funding final decisions would be made either at the end of 2016 or beginning of 2017. What we're proposing is to start the preliminary engineering on this schedule beginning in the year 2017. That would include the environmental studies. Down at the bottom of the schedule there, you can see the funding, the dollar amounts that we propose in 2017, $1 million. And that would be locally funded. All of the funding applications are very competitive, and they need to have the city take the first step in terms of doing that engineering and doing that environmental work. So that's what we propose with the anticipated schedule of getting to the environmental by the engineering as we propose it in our track application. We would be proposing $1.5 million of track funds to help fund the final engineering component. And then after the year 2018, moving into 2019, we move into a right-of-way acquisition for temporary and permanent right-of-way that would need to be acquired for the project, and then construction itself, which would be in the years 2020 and 2021. The Morpsey application is being set up to cover funding for the right-of-way as well as part of the construction. And then the safety funds that I talked about earlier from ODOT, those would be put towards the construction funding. So altogether, in the next slide, we are forecasting through these planning through these applications to request $17 million from the funding agencies for the $5.9 million investment from the city of Delaware. So that's 26% of Delaware's cost, and then the remainder at the funding applications.
I guess at this point, I think it'd be important for Bill to clarify the local contribution. And before he does that, I want to just indicate that this is the first application that we've made to Morpsey for attributable funding. Prior to this, the city received an allocation from Morpsey based upon the fact that we were not part of the metropolitan planning region. We're now part of the metropolitan planning region, so we compete with all of the other communities in central Ohio. So it's a more competitive process, and the local match is obviously in this case almost $6 million, which we don't have that. Obviously, that would be several years worth of saving up to get to that point. So I guess, Bill, if you could just talk about the how people square this with moving Delaware forward.
Sure.
To operate, because I think there's going to be confusion about that.
It's a really good point. Couple things to note, and the funding, it's a very strong application process with a 26%. We'd like to be at 30%, but that's still a significant amount of money. That's the questions we get in regard to. You don't have additional revenues right now. Why the Pennsylvania Avenue project and 23-315 project have taken so long is because we've never been in a position to want to advance a project if we can't see the end of the tunnel. And so we don't tend to move projects forward until we know every penny's in place. The way the federal process works is you need to go forward and start applying for money, knowing you may have to reapply for funds. The way we've set up the scheduling is you saw the initial commitment on the city's part is $1.5 million over the next 2.5 years, which is feasible, which should be a feasible accomplishment on our own. It's not the $6 million total that we could need, but it gets us through the preliminary and through the environmental, which are the most important parts upfront to strengthen an application. So we will apply for funds, and if we get some funds and need to apply for funding again, our application process 2 years from now, we're going to be so much stronger, having completed the preliminary and the environmental, and having already put city dollars forward. There is always a possibility, even in a competitive application, we might get that far in 2 years or even 4 years and still not have funding. It doesn't mean the $1.5 million spent so far is money wasted. It means we just have to keep competing for funds. Now, should a levy be on the ballot and be approved, the picture gets a lot simpler, because now we'll have revenues generated, and depending upon what other project priorities we have, we can shift more towards this to get this project moving forward, or we can lengthen the time of this project and the expenditures towards it. But the important part here is the point traffic isn't going to get any better, and it's not going to stay stable over the next 2 or 4 years. This is a project, if we're going to move forward, we need to invest up front before we know all the funding pieces are in place. If we don't, we're going to be in the same position 2 years, applying without any preliminary or without environmental done, and we'll have no stronger a chance 2 years from now than we do now. So it's a fairly critical point to be able to move forward in this process. But this project is probably the single most critical transportation need in the city, and which is why we've worked so diligently with MS Consultants to understand what the need is, get our best estimate, the current estimates of the total project cost, and come up with a program that allows us to advance it through 2 more years of work with the smallest commitment on the city's part in order to put us in the strongest position. So I feel we have fairly strong application right now. We've worked very close with ODOT, we've worked very close, District 6, and with MORPC, letting them understand the project and the need. There's so much more that will be in the narrative of the application that we'll share with council when the full application's available, in terms of justifying the project, not just for local congestion, but economic development, freight transport, are all very significant parts of this corridor as well. But the resolution tonight, it's for support of an application. Putting an application in and even being awarded some funds doesn't mean we'll have to come back to enter into an agreement at some point. And so there could be more thought process into, do we really want to commit the $1.5 million or not? If we choose the very safe route of waiting for all the funding to be there, we'll be in that 15-year process that we've been in on Pennsylvania Avenue with 23 through 15. This project just will not move forward. As competitive as applications are now, communities who are willing to step out and demonstrate, not just through legislation, but spending money up front, are the stronger applications. And that's why we've developed the program that we have in place right now. Does that answer the questions regarding? I know the numbers are overwhelming, and if we wait 2 or 4 years, we can add $3 million or $4 million to that total price tag. So it's time to move forward on this project. Again, the Moving Delaware Forward, we've talked about this project a lot through the presentations. I think all citizens we see, there's a lot of head shaking. Everyone agrees this is our top priority. But the city's got to have to take some initiative here to be able to advance this for this round of funding.
And just to clarify, and echo those comments, we've talked about kind of the 3 buckets of funding. The one bucket is the maintenance of our existing system and improving that. The second bucket is new connections throughout the city, Merrick Parkway, Valley Side Drive, and the others. The third is leveraging federal funding. And the more, if you can dedicate those dollars, even if it's a few $100,000 a year, that then doesn't rob you from these other projects and your own local road system. We could come up with $1.5 million. That means your local road program that you're going to have, that doesn't go anywhere for a few years. Right. So it's just, that's one of the, it's the clarification.
One last comment too is that the 5.9 is the local contribution. It doesn't mean it all has to be from the city of Delaware. I mean, Tom and I are working behind the scenes on partnerships from the region to put funding towards this project as well. We would hope that maybe a third of that number becomes from the citizens, and there's other partners out there who certainly make contributions to this as well, and we're working as a team. So we have time to develop those funds. Once the application in, we're not going to have most of the answers regarding funding, but we're going to start the ball rolling, and we're going to work really hard as a council, as staff, the community, to try to develop what that local partnership can be to meet that funding.
Seems like that's the biggest piece that's different from our original estimates. Our contribution
Yes.
is quite a bit higher.
Yeah, well, the project cost as well is also, one,
That's us.
yes, yeah.
And this is just the point. This does not include
Correct.
the East Central reconstruction or the improvements that MS is working on, the other improvements that we have to make perhaps at Lake and
Right.
Central or 23 and Central.
And that's why, and that's a different issue tonight, but that's why the levy issue is so significant, because that's the leveraging ability of having money. You can leverage it and get more money in, whether it's East Central Avenue or improvements that we may ultimately end on from MS's work, or other significant projects in town that could be federal attributable funding. We have to be able to leverage funds, and there's a limit to how many projects we can do. But this is one particular project that, my recommendation is, as Public Works Director and City Engineers, we don't want to sit any longer on this one, because it's becoming, I wouldn't say it's unbearable, but it's getting very difficult on the east side for longer timeframes. Any questions for either Ryan or Tom or myself regarding this?
Okay, what is the wish of council on resolution 16-24?
Move for the adoption of 1624 as seconded.
You guys are fighting for it tonight. Motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Item 10 is consideration of ordinance 16-45. Elena, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-45, an ordinance providing for the submission to the electorate of amendments to the Delaware City Charter and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that in order to provide for the usual daily operation of the various departments of the municipal government and to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare, this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure and shall take effect and be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage, and to assure that it will be in effect in time to be certified to the Delaware County Board of Elections so that the issue may be placed on the ballot at the November 8th, 2016 general municipal election.
Thank you. Darren, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to point out that the emergency clause, basically it makes the placing it on the ballot for the voters effective immediately, not the actual changes themselves. So it's not that we're going to have it take effect, obviously, but I just want to make it clear because the emergency clauses are weird. So.
And I don't necessarily think we need 2 public hearings on this. I don't know why it's set up for 2.
Yeah, we probably don't need to. I guess
Yeah.
I always like to, we can always wait and see if people show up for controversial stuff, but I don't think we need to. Timing wise, I think we're okay if we go to that third reading, so you can always not do the second one if you like. Or take off the third, and then if a bunch of people show up and we have to have another one, we can add it back on. I don't think there's anything, honestly, I don't think there's anything in here that's terribly controversial or.
Right. Okay. Any questions for Darren? Okay, we'll move on to item 11, which is consideration of ordinance 16-46.
Ordinance number 16-46, an ordinance to amend sections 192.012, 192.013, 192.014, and 192.02 of the codified ordinances of the City of Delaware, Ohio, in order to increase the city income tax by 0.15% from the current rate of 1.85% to a rate of 2% beginning January 1st, 2017, for the purpose of paying the cost of improving and maintaining the transportation and parking systems in the city by constructing and reconstructing municipal roads, highways, streets, bridges, sidewalks, bikeways, and parking facilities, acquiring real estate and interest in real estate, therefore, and paying the debt service charges and related cost of securities issued to pay the cost of those projects.
It's a good thing Mary Ann's not here, because that's one long sentence.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about process, and then you can get into the guts of what's going on here. So the way this will work is this is an ordinance that would make all these changes to our codified ordinances. If you notice, the effective date says it'll become effective assuming it is passed by the voters. So it won't have an emergency clause. It'll actually have a much longer effective date than normal. It'll say effective January 1st, 2017, provided it's upheld by the voters. If we ultimately pass this piece of legislation that same day, we would have a resolution. That resolution will then say, here, Board of Elections, here is the ordinance that we passed that we'd like you to put before the voters, and here is some sample recommended ballot language that we would like you to put as the ballot language there. So I believe I have a draft of that language, but resolutions don't require the 3 readings, and if this changes, it'd be easier to change that later on because resolutions don't require 3 readings. So the ballot language right now is written, it's a lot shorter and to the point, but this kind of tells a little bit more detail what's going on. I also want to point out, I will make those changes that we talked about earlier with the typos, and I sent this to our, as I mentioned before, our bond counsel. He might have some tweaks and suggestions, so this language that you have might change slightly by the time you get to the next reading, but I'll make sure it's in the packet, and I'll tell you what has changed.
Okay. Any questions?
This really is set for the next two
Yes.
meetings or public hearings.
This
The
one I
next
think
2
you'll-
meetings or public hearings?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions, Mayor.
Okay.
Portion says sidewalks. What is meant by sidewalks? Would that include at that point, would the sidewalk improvement program that the residents pay for, would that be eliminated?
No.
I'd have to assume so, otherwise they're gonna get taxed for it and they're gonna have to pay for it.
Right, now, it's just, the language is all inclusive, so if we're designing any project, take for example Valley Side, and it has sidewalks included, then we can pay for the sidewalks out of these funds just as much as a bikeway or the roads or any appurtenance to the road. So there's really no relationship between the Safe Walks program.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that more. You're gonna tell me that you're gonna tax the residents, and part of the taxation is for sidewalks, and then you're gonna turn around and say, you owe us $600 to fix the sidewalks. That's a big problem, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think, yeah, really this verbiage was meant from that standpoint was as a road project as a whole, it includes all the road furniture, including the sidewalks,
Right.
not necessarily the ongoing maintenance of the sidewalks.
The Safe
But
Walks,
it is the ongoing maintenance of the roads.
the Safe Walks program is, unless we change the ordinance, that doesn't require the property owners to pay for and.
I combined what George is saying, but that
Okay.
makes sense as just language, but I can guarantee you going forward, I'm gonna introduce some sort of legislation that residents aren't gonna have to pay for sidewalks if they're being taxed, per the taxes going towards sidewalks.
I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I assume, Bill, the primary impetus of this is if we're building a road where there is no, it's like our land and there's no one else to build a sidewalk, you can do it with that project as
Right.
well.
Which makes total sense.
Right, we could change, if we could consider calling it construction of new sidewalk as opposed to maintaining existing
So
sidewalks.
that I'd have a problem with.
Would that be better?
Yes, that
Clarify
I'd have a problem with, yeah.
Clarifies it.
Okay.
My concern with all this is that I want to make sure that we accurately and adequately reflect what we intend to do.
Agreed.
with These funds, and that nothing gets left out that we intend to do, nothing gets put in.
Yeah, you're saying exactly what I'm saying too, because I'm telling you, residents will say, when you give them a bill for $600 for a sidewalk, they'll say, and they go back to the ballot language and say, well, it says I'm paying for sidewalks already.
One of the two things that I'm concerned about is the signal light timing. I know we're applying for more funds, but to me, this doesn't clearly indicate that that's part of the transportation infrastructure. You could assume that it is, but I don't want to assume anything. And then the other piece is it talks about, originally says for maintaining the transportation park system, but then it goes on to constructing and reconstructing municipal roads. Don't we also want to put something in there about the actual ongoing maintenance, because a big piece of this levy is for the maintenance piece.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're really clear about what we're going to do, but everything we're going to do is in here.
In the first part of that, Councilman, is the purpose of paying the cost of improving and maintaining.
The transportation.
Right, but then it identifies that as constructing and reconstructing municipal roads. We've been part of it.
Right.
We've been here for people as the maintenance of the existing
Right.
roads.
Okay.
That's
I
not
can-
reconstruction in my mind, that's maintenance.
So let's
Well, I could probably just change reconstruction to maintenance. I think I don't know, Bill, is there an art to the term there? No?
I don't mean to be nitpicky, I just want to make sure, we talked a lot.
Yeah, you captured it.
Believe me, we've gone through a lot of drafts and I welcome input because we're trying our best here.
That's good.
Identify ongoing maintenance and our signal light.
Okay.
Bill, is there a term of art that reconstructing is different than maintenance, or would it cause you a problem if we
I
switch
can
those?
work with you on
Okay.
that to come up with the appropriate language, but it can't be misconstrued. At least we hope it wouldn't be, but
I'm also concerned about where it says acquiring real estate, interest in real estate. Now, is that real estate as it pertains to construction of roads?
Correct.
So at no point can we say, well, we can buy the house over
Right.
on Dempsey because technically it says we can acquire real estate with that. And I don't want that to be
The
case
only
either.
time that could possibly happen, Councilman Jones, is there are situations where when you need to buy land for a road, and let's say the road comes like, literally right up to the front door of the house, you have to buy the whole property. But
I don't want to buy the Packatan store with this money.
No.
Because we
It's
can't.
got to be in
because it's
connection
a-
with the
Right.
roadway. Okay.
Right.
We should clarify that.
Yeah. That's all I had there.
Any other comments? Okay, so you guys will redraft this?
I'll do my best.
All righty, I appreciate it.
And I may also just, since we have some good comments here, we may introduce, it might be unorthodox, but I might recommend introducing the ultimate resolution a week early so we can have the same kind of discussion so I can get the best draft, if that's okay with council. We won't vote on it, but it'll be good to have that out.
It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. And this is coming back for two public hearings.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's the way it's scheduled
That's
to, I
what
think.
that's what I would prefer.
Yes. I think we have plenty of time to do that.
And item 12 on the agenda is consideration of ordinance 16-47. Elena, if you'll please read this on the record.
Ordinance number 16-47, an ordinance approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for certified oil to raise the existing building and construct a new building for certified oil at 2061 US 23 North on property zone B4 General Business District on approximately 0.998 acres.
Thank you. Ms. Joplin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm going to go in very summary fashion for you tonight. I think you've had a lot on your plate already. And then happy to answer any questions you might have. This is for the existing certified oil station on US 23 North. The property is zone B4 that allows that station by right, as we know, at this time. The site is part of a shopping center adjacent to Wendy's, and part of the county occupies a portion of that shopping center. While we're on the aerial photograph, I'll show you that the signal is here on US 23. And as part of this project, Certified Oil has purchased this portion of the property from the county, which will allow access across this property into a signal. As you know, it's a right-in, right-out configuration today, but it's a little, it's not as clear a configuration as we would like and traffic engineers would like. And so part of this project is to consolidate to really make a much clearer right-in, right-out access point at the southernmost or close to the southernmost portion of this property, making access a little safer and formalizing the access to the back of the property. So these plans are included as part of your packet. As you can see, most of it is hardscape today. The business exists today. There would be a complete tear down and rebuild on this site of about a 4,400 square foot gas station and convenience store, as well as a new canopy. That would include 6 fuel pumps, would not include any pumps for semis or trucks. It would not include any overnight parking for semis or trucks, just for the record. But here you can see the reconfigured access point. There is not very much room on this site for green space. Most of the green space room actually occurs on the Wendy's site. Nevertheless, and there's really very little landscaping out there today. Nevertheless, with this project, and it's really hard to see up here, I know, so consult your packets as well. There would be a couple of street trees and front landscaping introduced that doesn't exist today. In addition, I think you saw it on the previous slide, some trees down the side property line. The building is designed really in conformance with a lot of the convenience stores and gas stations to a high level and a high degree with primarily brick. This happens to be also primarily glazed or glass in the front, quite a lot of that with pitched roof and a stone wainscoting. There would be 2 entrances. This would be the 23 entrance on the bottom here, and because that access drive comes around back, some of the parking's around back, there would be a secondary entrance, as you can see in this elevation as well. I didn't put the canopy in here, but it is in your packet. features stone columns and a mansard roof and a relatively tan configuration, if you will. Not a lot of colors to it, but colors to fit in with the rest of the architecture and the design of this particular site. So with that, I'll tell you that staff recommends approval of this combined preliminary and final development plan, as does your planning commission. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Just want to say thank you to the certified team. They've been working with us over the course of several months now to address these engineering and site design considerations, and they've addressed all the issues that we factor. So I appreciate the efforts.
So the landscaping for the right out, you're going to do on an opposite side of the driveway on 23. Is that's going to be a tree or shrubs? I mean, I just don't want anything.
It won't be tall.
Okay.
This will be low level landscape, because obviously you're trying to get cars in and out to a fast moving highway. There will be some drop lanes added though, where we don't really have those formalized today. I mean, there's a little bit of one there. But that will be low, and that's why the street trees are clustered over in this portion of the site. I don't know if you can see the arrow, but in the north portion of the site right here.
Okay. And then in looking at the canopies, we have one that says Marathon, and then another one that says Sunoco, and then another one. What is this? Certified.
They work with a number of the oil companies, and they're going to decide how to brand it. So this simply gave the options. They also had, I think, $3.85 a gallon for gas. We asked them to lower that to $1.50.
No, I read my package.
Yeah.
43212.
Did you get the rest of that?
949 King Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, welcome. Thank you. Yeah, we have not decided on a branding partner at this point. So we're in some negotiations with Sunoco, and so we needed a contingency plan if we did. So,
I was just a little confused.
yeah, the building, as you saw, is our design for our certified customers, our certified family, our branding of our gasoline. We kind of figure what meets our customers' wants and needs the best. So.
Any other questions for the applicant?
When was that constructed, that original facility? That facility there now? I mean, that's an upgrade from 19.
I don't know that off the top of my head. It's been a while, and it's had a couple additions since I've been here.
Yeah, I've been in, I wasn't West certified when that was built. I've been in the business 30 some years, and that building design is a mid to late 70s design. So it's been there. I would hazard to guess all of that. So.
Okay. And what is the wish of council? You want to take a third one? Staff recommends approval. Is there any reason to hold it up? Well, then someone needs to make a motion.
Can I?
No, you can't.
I move we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on 1647.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you
We're
folks.
not done.
I move for the approval of 1647 as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. We've enjoyed working with you and continue working with you folks.
Thank you. Item 13 is consideration of ordinance 16-48. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-48, an ordinance approving a final development plan for Ohio Wesleyan University for a Phase 2 small living unit Slough, on approximately 1.373 acres located on the north side of Roland Avenue between South Washington Street and South Liberty Street on property zoned POI PMU, Planned Office Institutional District with a planned mixed-use overlay district.
Thank you. Ms. Chaplin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is the second phase of the small living unit or the SLU projects here on Roland Avenue. I think it's the project has advanced faster than any of us thought it might in Ohio Wesleyan, and that's due to the availability of some funding sources. As you'll recall, you passed a rezoning of this block that entailed a planned mixed-use overlay and allowed for the first project, and this project is in conformance with that zoning and the preliminary plan as well. So this would be at the corner of Washington and Roland, the opposite corner from the very first building that was built just last year. I'm going to buzz along here and show you that there were two houses at the corner. Those have been demolished in anticipation of this construction, and that was also as planned. Here's part of that zoning and the preliminary plan showing you in a rendered form, a conceptual form, the potential for small living units along Roland Avenue. We have this one constructed, and this one is phase 2. Again, here, this was from that rezoning, a preliminary plan. Part of that preliminary plan looked very specifically at a parking study relative to all 4 of these potential units. That parking study was accepted with that zoning, and the parking study doesn't call for any additional parking for this particular building. There is a parking lot over here just across South Washington Street that will accommodate parking required. In future phases, additional parking would be required, and that was contained within their zoning language. Again, the same quality architectural design as the first SLU and in conformance with the zoning requirements as well. Your staff does recommend approval of this case, as does your planning commission. And again, appreciative of working with these applicants and Ohio Wesleyan University. They're an anchor to our community and improving this block face as well. So I appreciate that. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have some. Are those going to be the colors of this one, or we're going to match the other one? I was quite surprised.
Allow the applicant to address that. These would be the proposed colors.
Okay. Good evening.
I'm Randy Rieger with BSHM Architects, 137 North Washington Street here in Delaware. I'm the project architect, and the colors won't be the same. They'll be different, so that it looks more like a residential street with a variety of colors. The actual colors have not exactly been determined yet, because there's always a lot of cooks stirring the pot, trying to decide. They will fit in with the neighborhood.
Okay. I was just surprised when I drove past. Was like
The brighter colors.
Yes.
And the students had some input too. So
One of the ideas is to have a variety of colors in a palette, at least, that all fit within a palette. Maybe not as bright as the first one, as you indicate, but so they aren't looking all exactly the same.
Right.
Okay.
How many units are in
It's a double. There's 2 units. There's 12 bedrooms on each side, so 12 students per side. Yep, 24.
Same as the first?
Correct. Yep.
Any other questions? It's 16-48.
Motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 1648.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hellinger, a second by Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve 1648 with all staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hellinger, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank
Thank you.
you. Item 14 is consideration of ordinance 16-49. Elena, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-49, an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriations ordinance to provide additional funding for payment of contracted recreation services to the YMCA.
Okay.
I was-
Mr. Holman?
Yeah, just like this to go to a second reading, please. I've got a couple of questions I've got to get answered. I'll have for you at the next meeting.
All righty. Item 15 is consideration of ordinance 16-50.
Ordinance number 16-50, an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriations ordinance to increase funding for the purchase of equipment for the solid waste recycling operation.
Yes, this bill.
Mr. Farino's back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'll be brief, but what we're looking at here tonight is a amendment to the original appropriations ordinance. We spec'd out with our plans to relocate the recycling operation to 440 East William Street. We're also redesigned the recycling loadout procedure for a more efficient procedure. It requires the purchase of what we call a compact wheel loader to load open 70-yard roll-offs, much more efficient than the way we're doing it now. We applied for a grant about the same time, just before the budget was being considered late last year. We didn't receive information regarding approval of that grant until after the budget was approved. We also applied for $45,000, only received $20,000. But it's still $20,000 towards the purchase. But that, combined with the money we had set aside in the budget, is not enough for the total purchase of it. So we need to supplement out of the refuse fund additional $30,000 for this piece of equipment that will be used in the new recycling operation. So the reason why it's $50,000 is we need to also we need to appropriate funds just to cover the grant, which will come in and go out, plus the $30,000 from our current balance within the refuse fund. So a total of just over $80,000 in the purchase of the piece of equipment. We talked internally about can we push the money aside and build on next year and double that? And the answer is no. We have to accept the grant or refuse the grant. So we have $20,000 we're looking at right now. And a grant next year would also be $20,000. It wouldn't be a $40,000. So it's a bird in hand right now in this situation, but we need to do the supplemental in order to go ahead and purchase a piece of equipment. A piece of equipment could be several months out anyways. We still don't have the recycling building built, but we absolutely will use this piece of equipment in that building. So we'll have it in advance of the building being installed. I can answer the question.
Use the grant money, it'll go back in the refuse fund.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other questions for Bill?
This will be a second reading.
Yes, we'll take this to a second reading tonight. Thank you. Item 16 is consideration of ordinance 16-51. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-51, an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for administrative support within the city prosecutor's office and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to provide continued administrative support in the prosecutor's office, and as such will be in full force and be in effect immediately upon its passage.
Mr. Shulman?
Madam Mayor, members of council, as I mentioned in my fact cover sheet, our prosecutor's office administrative support currently consists of 2 staff members. Each one is in charge of a docket because there's 2 judges. We've talked at numerous budget sessions how busy that office is already. As you may be aware, one of our administrative assistants is on extended leave. Will be out of the office, has been out for a good 3 weeks, and will be out maybe all the way through the end of the year. Our office isn't built to function that way with the staffing for an extended absence like that. We can kind of hang on for a week, but a long time we just can't pull off. So for the past Since that staff member has been out, we've been using iForce, which is a temporary staffing agency that we used in the past. We have a contract with them to provide staffing. I've been paying for that out of my professional services budget. However, we didn't anticipate this kind of lengthy absence in our budget, so that money is going to be tapped out pretty soon, and I won't have the ability to pay for that assistance anymore. So this appropriation is just basically helping cover this unexpected shortfall through the end of the year if that's required. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? What is the wish of council?
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on 1651.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rohr, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move to enact the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rohr, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Motion to approve ordinance 1651.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rohr, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, council.
Item 17 is consideration of ordinance 16-52. Elena, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-52. An ordinance amending the 2016 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for parking lot maintenance work at the Delaware Community Center and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to provide timely parking lot maintenance work in conjunction with the city's annual asphalt maintenance contract, and as such will be in full force and be in effect immediately upon its passage.
Welcome. First one, are you nervous?
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, we're looking to do some preventive maintenance at the parking lot at the YMCA, and we've contacted the National Guard and YMCA, so we're looking to schedule this later this year after we get these appropriations made, but the city will cover the whole entire cost and get reimbursed from both the YMCA and National Guard. So,
And going forward, this will be an annual appropriation that will be reflected in our budget. It just kind of got lost in the transition in 2016 for the 2016 budget. There will be an appropriation. That's what the agreement provides for us. The city actually does the maintenance and then gets it, bills back to the National Guard and the YMCA. So this is really, this didn't get done last year. If you've gone out to that parking lot, the lines are fading and there's cracks and it needs to be.
yeah, and the work includes crack sealing, and then painting lines in the parking lot.
And when do you anticipate the work being done?
At the end of June, beginning of July, possible.
I just worry about because it's so busy right now.
Well, and that's going to be the biggest hurdle is the scheduling with the Guard and the YMCA.
So what they had talked about possibly was Sunday, perhaps trying to get the contractor to schedule something because the Y doesn't open until noon on Sunday, and perhaps trying to get it, there's a window of opportunity there. That's what we'll have to deal with between the three entities out there.
Right. We've made them aware of it, so we'll have to work on the scheduling next.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And what is the wish of council?
I move we suspend the rules on 1652.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for the adoption of the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for the adoption of 1652 as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeGenova, second by Mr. Rohr. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And item 18 is consideration of ordinance 16-53. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 16-53, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into cooperative agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons on South Liberty Street at the Oak Hill Avenue, Spring Street, and Roland Avenue intersections and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, property, health, safety, welfare, or to provide for the usual daily operation of a department or an office of the city, and as such will be in full force immediately upon its passage.
Thank you.
Last one.
Okay.
This is time sensitive in that we just received this requirement for cooperation agreement from ODOT after the last council meeting, so we do need approval tonight. This just is really apropos that we just talked about the Owu Slough project, because this is right at the front door of it. We've long since known we needed to make improvements out there, and largely, or I want to say entirely through Jessica's work in identifying these funds and working with ODOT. She's come up with a really good fix out there that ODOT is going to design, construct, and implement. But I'll let Jessica talk about the details. But what we thought is Jessica found a video that, I'll let you explain the video.
Yeah. This, I mean, it's easier to watch the video on how the device actually works, and this being the first one that'll be installed within the city limits too. I'm sure you've seen these in other communities like Columbus, Dublin, and so on and so forth, but they've been shown to, increase driver awareness of pedestrians crossing without actually having to put a signal. And the good thing about these devices are, instead of pushing the button and having to wait for it to be activated, it automatically activates right then. Obviously, the pedestrians still have to watch and yield to traffic, but it helps the driver awareness. So this video kind of show how they work and
Hello and welcome to TAPCO's Traffic Safety Video Series. Today we'll take a look at TAPCO's Rectangular Rapid Flash Beacons, or RRFBs. RRFBs are user-actuated amber LED arrays that may be used to supplement warning signs at unsignalized intersections, mid-block crosswalks, and roundabouts. RRFBs enhance pedestrian and vehicle safety by increasing driver awareness of potential pedestrian conflicts, reducing crashes between vehicles and pedestrians. RRFBs need to be activated by pedestrians, either actively by a push button or passively by a pedestrian detection system, including video detection or infrared bollards, as shown here activating blinker sign LED pedestrian crossing signs. TAPCO push buttons and infrared activators can be self-powered and remotely located, eliminating the need to run wiring, thereby saving you time and money. RRFBs use an irregular flash pattern that is similar to the emergency flashers used on police and emergency vehicles, referred to as wigwag or stutter flash pattern. Side-mounted LED arrays flash concurrently to advise pedestrians that the units are flashing. TAPCO offers two sizes of RFBs. The standard size RRFB model has 2-inch by 5-inch arrays, which meet the FHWA standard. The RRFB XL model with oversized 3-inch by 7-inch arrays exceeds the federal standard. The extra-large LED arrays provide greater conspicuity, ideal for multi-lane and higher-speed roadways. Studies showed an 81% compliance rate of drivers yielding to pedestrians with an RRFB on the right side and 88% compliance with RRFB on both sides. TAPCO RRFB systems are typically solar-powered, making them an ideal solution for rapid deployment. Solar-powered systems reduce installation, maintenance, and electric costs to give you huge time and cost savings over grid-based systems. But TAPCO can provide RRFB to be wired to your AC power source. TAPCO also offers a web-based monitor, alert, and control system called BlinkLink. Provides you access to
so the state has awarded us 100% funding on this. Like he said, ODOT will construct it and everything, so it's just the city allowing ODOT to come in and do the work. So
Are we going with the smaller one or the bigger one?
it'll be the larger array, yes, and we'll have them, they'll be on both sides. Since it's a four-legged intersection, they'll be on both sides of the road. As you're approaching, you'll see it on both sides, on each leg of the approach. So, and it'll just be for the Liberty Street crossings.
Well, who's not going to put any money in it?
Well, they don't need.
I know, I'm just.
But we have reached out in terms of, because for this project, we'll be able to take down all those plastic yellow delineators that have been there for a while. That was our temporary. So we'll be able to clean up the pavement, sweep it, put these in. And then we have reached out to OWU about a second phase if they want to enhance the pavement through there, bring in some of the college colors and theme into that. We're willing and open to that and willing to work with them on that.
And as part, go on.
That's great. You don't have to play dodge and move
No,
students anymore.
no. And as part of this, the pavement markings will be upgraded. It's a thermo-type pavement marking. It lasts 6 to 8 times longer than your basic paint. So that will be administered. The city will be doing that work because it's heat applied. In addition, we're hoping, as long as the materials come in, we should hopefully get this installed before High Westland starts school. If not, it'll be very soon after that. So it's very easy installation. It's solar powered. It's just a matter of screwing in a foundation, setting up the pole, and getting everything, I guess, linked to one another because it's all wireless. So.
Great.
Good job. Thank you. I guess we'll vote on this, huh? Anybody?
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1653.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bohr, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer? Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Motion to approve the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bohr, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Motion to enact ordinance 16-53.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rohr, second by Mr. Hellinger. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are we going to have an executive session?
You're looking at me like you don't want one.
Is there a need?
You wanna?
I sent you some information on the contract, but we can do that next week, next meeting, if you don't have any pressing concerns.
Okay. City manager's report.
Just a couple of items. Saturday is the Northern Olentangy Watershed Festival, the Now Festival. If you get a chance to stop by the park, Mingo Habitat, I think, has a picnic going on. I think most of you received invitations for that. And we had wonderful dedications of 2 really important civic facilities in our community. The Veterans Plaza went off. It was really well attended, overwhelmingly attended. It was just outstanding. And then the splash pad dedication, despite the weather, was equally well attended. And I don't know what Tad, I'm going to put you on the spot. How has the utilization been at the at Splash Pad?
Very well attended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, our concessionaire is going to start giving discounts, so we can go through some numbers out there too.
Great. Oh, Bill, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Second to splash pad, I was over the other day, just watching it. I was tempted, it was, but the parking lot, the north parking lot was almost full. People immediately heard the words out. People love it. Just wanted to update you on London Road. It looks, we should be finishing concrete tomorrow. Our goal is to have it open Friday. So it's been relatively smooth, but this Friday. Yep.
And then Sandusky.
Now, the second part is Sandusky. The bad news is Sandusky will close on Monday south of William Street down to Spring Street for the bridge deck replacement and repairs. That should be no more than a 2-week closure, assuming that the assessment of the condition is still accurate. But that will replace that deck on that bridge. And it won't take the deck off completely, but it'll take all the deteriorated concrete off and put a new deck surface on there. So with that, we'll have most of our major disruption completed, but for base repair coming up on Central Avenue, east and west through the paving program, there'll be some periodic disruption of traffic with that.
No getting into City Hall parking lot.
That'll still be open. The access will be open on Sandusky Street. The full closure won't be to the beginning of the bridge. So it will be signed appropriately so folks can use as much parking as available on both sides of the road. They just won't be able to pass past the Delaware Run where the work will be going on.
Okay, thank you.
And then the mall opening is next Thursday, I think. Friday, rather. I think. Yeah, you've got that. And there is a meeting, I think I've forwarded you information prior regarding Boardman Park. The Northwest Neighborhood Association is interested in a concept to develop Boardman, what is known now as Boardman Field, into a park-like park, actually. Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple of meetings with them. And any feedback? I know, George, you was at
Boardman, where they right across by Wesleyan.
Big open field down in Crestons.
Willis uses, or Willis goes, Willis uses it as their rec area. It's a fenced-in area there,
Elizabeth?
where they practice football,
Oh, okay.
8th grade football.
There you go.
Once the remaining grades move out of Willis, that becomes primarily an admin building. They'll no longer have the need for that as a annex to the school for athletic purposes. So the Northwest Neighborhood Association has initiated some conversations with the city and the schools about that. We've given them a concept. Their premise is they would fundraise for that park. In a conversation I had with George last week, he raised the question about the proximity to our existing Blue Limestone Park. And does that serve, how does that work with respect to this park? And that's just something that I put Ted on the spot for.
I know as Ted's coming up, I had made a suggestion that it should be a parking area for downtown. And then this came up, so.
One point that was part of that.
Well, I think with the run there, they're trying to open that up to make it more nature preserve than that.
Yeah, and it's kind of a Boardman art garden, so they're going to kind of take this on and negotiations with the city, trying to. We've kind of told them that this is going to be kind of their responsibility to kind of raise the funds for this park and maintain the park as we work through some of the concepts on it. And I know we did bring up the opening of the Delaware Run and what that brings to it. And I've talked to Bill about a little bit about that too. And he brought up a good point about how at some point we're gonna have to open that run up anyway, just to repair it. We'll kind of work through some of those and see what our alternatives are there.
So who actually owns the land? The schools?
The school.
correct?
Schools would have to enter into an
And
agreement
the
with the
schools are
city.
willing?
Well, we've had conversations with
Okay.
them. I mean, I think they're not, I don't think, looking at selling it.
No.
It's a process they would have to go through to allow it to go to other schools first. So I think what they're looking at is some sort of a long-term agreement with the city, and we would in turn, I don't know.
Yeah, turn it into a passive park, basically work with them to make that happen, so.
But George, your concern was more just the utilization of Blue Limestone.
Well, yeah, I had some concerns with the proximity to Blue Limestone, and every time I'm out, I go through at least 3 or 4 parks. Blue Limestone is always heavily used, and it's wonderful to see it. It's heavily used. So I question what opening that up, daylighting, I would not be in favor of daylighting the street. Ever, in my opinion. Once it's covered, I think it should, if we need to maintain it, we should recover it. You have more space. You open it up, it looks nice until all the trash gets down into it, and then it's difficult to maintain. And it just looks, long-term, it sounds great, but long-term reality, most of the time it looks trashy, in my opinion. 5 years down the road, it's like, man, I wish we hadn't done that. But that's just me.
Yeah, and that is definitely something we don't want to create an eyesore. So if we do it, it'd have to be done the right way. And it'd be nice to restore a lot of sections of the Delaware Run and bring it back into a natural state. So that's all things we'll look into as we work through these concepts.
I just forwarded the concept that we've come up with, but again, that's just conversation right now. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, council comments. Mr. Jones?
You might want to come back to me. I have a list.
Okay. Mr. DeGenova?
Ted should have stayed up here. I got several items. The Memorial Plaza has a damage to the Air Force insignia. I don't know whether someone tried to rip it off or kick it.
Yeah, we actually had a punch list walk through there today, and those are going to get replaced. We're going to actually look at doing them a little bit differently so that doesn't happen again, yes.
Because they're made out of plastic, and I thought they should have been made out of.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember what the Navy insignia looked like, but it was, the letters were reversed, and it'll probably hold up better when we look at replacing that. And there's several items on that punch list that we went through today.
Did they have the punch lists, the county insignia fell off?
Yes.
I put it back on yesterday.
It has some.
It has no glue or no screws to it or anything.
There's a new one being made of that because there's also some dents in it too. So yeah.
Okay. And then after the ceremony, someone said that at nighttime we should probably add 2 more lights to the eternal fronting, one in the front and one in the back. There's only 2 on it, and it really doesn't show up at nighttime. So I don't know what cost factor that would be, or if the electricians could do that.
We looked at moving the lights also, and also maybe rotating the flame a little bit so that it lights up a little bit better. So
Yeah.
we're gonna start playing around with a little bit of that, the lighting technique on that.
Okay. And then Tanger, they're having a VIP on Friday, but on Thursday, for the ladies of us, or my wife, I was going, we got an invite for a special night to go and shop.
Those went out by special invitation.
Yeah, they went out. So it's both Thursday and Friday at Tanger next week.
Because those women shop, that's why.
Yeah, I get that.
And then I have forms here.
I can get one.
I have forms here that the Veterans Administration wanted me to hand out, and all the other organizations. If you know a veteran who wants to be nominated for a Veteran of the Year, or a friend of the veteran, which the mayor was a friend of the veteran, and she got this award, you can take it and submit it to the VA office on Sandusky. Any veteran that you want to recommend. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Roy?
I don't think I got a VIP invitation.
I think you have to be of a specific gender.
Mr. Hilliard?
Yeah, I got one.
I just have a question for Miller Jessica. What's the status on the can opener height warning?
Actually, we got.
She's got to, you need to, for purposes of the viewing audience, all 5 of them.
We actually just submitted the final plans to the Ohio Department of Transportation along with utility companies. Once we get final acceptance of that and any final comments, then we'll be putting the bidding package together, and then it has to go down to ODOT central office to be finally approved. And we're hoping probably, I'd say, by the end of summer here, we'll probably get going on things. So it'll be bid out, so.
Quicker than it sounded like. Goes to the central office, gets lost.
Next year, yeah.
Okay,
So,
great,
yep.
thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Schaefer?
Well,
Well, if you haven't visited Veterans Memorial at night, you have to go. It is breathtaking. It is just beautiful. Last weekend I spent in Raleigh, North Carolina, learning about Ironman. I actually worked one where we had for a treat, but it was so much fun, and I have so much respect for these athletes. Just unbelievable. A 79-year-old man completed it, a blind gentleman completed it with a leader, 2 women between the ages of 65 and 69, and it was 91 degrees and 79% humidity. Unbelievable. And the volunteers didn't matter how hot, they were just happy and having a great time. So I just hope Delaware's going to be ready, so. Okay, now we'll move back to Mr. Jones. Positive note, right?
Well, it's just a calf start in 10 minutes. I kept listening. Mostly simple. About a month ago, I mentioned the nets at Nottingham Park. The soccer nets have been cut, and as of this morning, they're still useless.
We did look into those, and I guess the nets aren't used is what we understand now. So they're used all the time? Okay. So we just need to get the new nets on there at this point and get the mow around them.
Yeah, it's definitely from weed whackers. I mean, if you look at the back of the nets, it's just slice, from in big weeds. So I'm not moving it out of the way to do it, but okay. Well, while you're there, last meeting I asked about reducing the backlog with the $250,000 in the tree fund. Is there, you going to get back to me after you had a conversation?
Yeah, we have not had a chance to follow up. indicated to you that we have some dollars available now, so I just have to meet with Ted to figure out what the plan would be, bring it back to city council in the form of a supplemental appropriation, and then have you act on it. It's got to be acted on by council.
Residents can go online, they can report an outage of a stoplight. You have that whole list of report a problem, it's online. When a resident does that, is there a way for the ward council representative to get a copy of that? To get notified of that there was an issue of any sort?
Yeah, typically Michelle tries to keep the representative in the loop.
I've never, ever, in
You mean
8
from
years, got notification.
the app? Are you talking about the app or?
Yeah, you can go onto the city website and click on report a problem, where you can report a pothole, you can report a street outage, and then you click on it, it goes to an email, and you can report that issue. What I'm saying is I would like to get a notification if it's something in the first ward. that
Okay,
I'm aware
sure.
of.
Okay,
So
yeah,
that's-
we can do that.
Go ahead and cut that one out, and that one out. That one out. So I guess for me, the biggest one is, I'd like to know what the plan is that we're doing for the rec fields at the YMCA in conjunction with Mingo. And where I'm going with this is I challenge anybody in this room to go to Mingo on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at about 10 till 7, try to find a place to park.
No, we were there.
It's a cluster. It's unbelievable. Either, and then you go, it's bad scheduling. There's too much going on at one time. You got a full swimming pool. You got, people parking everywhere. You have, games back to back. There's nowhere to park. People are parking on the grass. And now last week the police were giving tickets for people on the grass and everybody with. I mean, it was just, reminded me of that old Frankenstein movie. They all would have had the flames. They were going to march down to City Hall. That there's no place to park. And then, you got all this going on. Then we got all these, we spent millions of dollars for fields over at the YMCA that aren't being used. I don't know why we can't do something here. Or we need to look at some point adding more parking at Mango, because it's, go down there Wednesday night at about 10 till 7, try to find a place to park. You can't do it. It's crazy. So it's more of a statement or anything else, but it's just frustrating, and everybody's upset because they're getting tickets, and then you go to the splash pad and you see all these fields that aren't being used, and you get all this cluster going on at Mingo, and it just makes no sense what's going on. So I guess I'm looking for some sort of direction. I've heard we're resting these fields for these fields and switching back and forth. So there's really, in my opinion, no clear direction of what's going on with the investment we put in the fields over at the YMCA. So what's
Okay. We'll follow up on that, Chris. I had heard the same thing, and some of it was, I think Councilwoman Keller had mentioned it to me, and I had a conversation with our police chief about it, just in terms of the capacity that we're at.
It's, I mean, literally every spot.
And even the auxiliary lot was.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's a problem.
You cannot find a place to park at 10 till 7 on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And some of that has to do with DYAA has been allocated the fields at Mingo and the fields at the community center. City's fields are YMCA, and if it looks like we're out of capacity there, then we've got to reallocate.
The YMCA programs aren't even near.
Right. So they need more.
Exactly.
So DYAA just needs more field space.
Exactly.
It sounds like. Okay.
Anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
We're adjourned at 8:57.